position yourself in an interesting way, have something differential, tell your story in a compelling way, have a call to action at the end.
Welcome to Biz Help for You, the show that saves you the expensive learning curve by providing advice from industry experts in every facet of the entrepreneurial journey. Too many small businesses collapse. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 20% fail within their first year, and less than 35% make it to their 10th anniversary. The goal of this podcast is to change that statistic. So if you're interested in learning more to be a successful entrepreneur, tune in today.
Let me tell you a little bit about my guest today. Tiago helps experts do the most fun marketing they'll ever do and attract the most pre-sold leads they'll ever get. Oh, and by the way, he does it through podcast guesting. So Tiago, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Candy. Super excited to be here. Can't wait to talk about the random experiment I did last year. Completely changed my business. And I mentioned it to you, but let's go ahead and talk about it.
So before we get into the actual discussion that we're going to have, I'd love for you just to talk about how did you even become involved in podcasting?
Yes. Long story, I can go back just to my first contact with the marketing world. So I worked at Google in Ireland, Dublin, Ireland, next to, so basically in the same time zone as me. I'm in Lisbon, Portugal, but I was working there for 8 years, learned a lot about marketing, learned a lot about business. We got tired of the corporate world very quickly. I understood I was psychologically unemployable at some point, and I just had to quit, come back to Portugal, started my entrepreneurial path here, just trying to help some local businesses with Google Ads, Google Maps, Facebook ads, but nothing was exciting for me and for my clients. I didn't find anything that an offer that would excite me and my clients. So for 5 years, I was like up and down, up until last year when I was exhausted of creating content all the time. I was on that content hamster wheel and I burned out. I stopped creating it, and also my business also went down. And then just before I went on holidays to Georgia, here in Europe, not in the US. It's a very random country to choose, by the way. But I just received an email from my mentor saying that, a new program, you don't need to create any content, just pure podcast guesting, referrals, partnerships. I was, oh my God, this is for me. Yes. I completely signed up and I went all in. Usually I'm crazy with these obsessive strategy that I opt into. And I for 4 months, I closed the curtains and booked myself for 67 different podcasts, which is insane. Don't recommend anyone, by the way. But it gave me a amazing insight into what works, what doesn't work in this world. Met amazing people like Candy, learned a lot through what works, what doesn't, how to be an amazing guest, how to position yourself in an interesting way, how to create referral partnerships through this strategy. We can talk about it later. So it was amazing. And I was posting those interviews on my LinkedIn profile. Some people approached me asking, Tiago, what the hell? Why are you suddenly everywhere? How do you do that? And it's giving me, there's a sign that the market is telling me there's a need here. And then I gathered all my experiences with Google, my offer creation experiences in business coaching with this experiment. And then, I basically started helping people basically have the most fun marketing they will ever do. Like you said, the dream marketing scenario, because you basically just go on, have conversations with amazing people. And those podcast hosts, they extract your best content from you without you even noticing, basically. You don't have to stare at the camera trying to be cool all the time. You're just talking to people. And then you can leverage that content to, long form content to warm up your cold leads, short form videos for your social media. I basically don't create content. My clients also don't need to create content all the time. So that's what got me here.
Right. So like you were saying, you did other marketing before, and obviously podcasting is another type of marketing, so what would you just say to someone who's saying, well, I am, trying to market my company. I'm interested in podcasting. I'm not really sure what I should talk about. Like, how do they determine maybe even what they should put together as information that they can share so they can potentially, talk to those podcast hosts and say, hey, I think I would be great for your show?
Absolutely, great question. And that's absolutely a focus that I didn't have when I did that podcast tour. I was just randomly doing stuff. But I got coached by many hosts that we should not just go on and position ourselves generically. I'm just another, I don't know, a lawyer, just another lawyer here, and just want to talk about lawyer stuff. That's the wrong approach, because first of all, you won't attract the attention of podcast hosts, and it will not attract the attention of the listeners, because just another one. The guy doesn't stand out from the pack. So I think the first exercise we need to do is think clear. Okay, who am I serving? What is my dream client, right? Who can I actually generate the biggest transformations, give the best results, be as specific as possible. That's what helps a lot in positioning. And then think about, okay, what's the result I provide with them, and what is my unique, I call it unique mechanism. Many people call it unique mechanism. What is different from you? Why should people choose you and not the other lawyer or not the other? We have to think proactively about that. And I have 3 different strategies that I go with my clients to make them think, basically. So, for example, what is the number one frustration that your clients have? And maybe you can add that to your positioning. So I help you do this without this thing you hate. This is already something different, something new, right? Or you can go ahead and say, what are your competitors saying? And can you say something the complete opposite, right? Something that is new, different, unusual. Maybe you can position yourself that way. Or maybe you have a combination of skills that you matched to create your process, how you help your clients or how you work with clients, etc. So thinking proactively this way is halfway there, not just for podcasting, but for any other things that you do, speaking gigs or online advertising. All these things will help you stand out. And in the podcasting world, it's also super important to craft your story of how you get to do what you're doing today. Why are you serving these clients nowadays? Or why are you starting this business? Why did you start helping these people? And I love to craft origin stories, leveraging hero's journey. The hero's journey framework, right? And I adapt it to the podcasting world, so that your story is not just a bunch of facts about your life, but it's crafted in a way that is compelling to the listener and then to your target audience, so they feel like, oh my God, he understands me deeply. So I'm interested in what he's saying, right? So these are the 2 things that are part of my process, how I work with my clients. By the way, it's the DREAM method. It's the first D is the design, to design the way how you position yourself in the eyes of the hosts first and foremost, but also as in the ears of the listeners, to attract them to your world, basically, right? So those would be the 2 things I would talk about more.
Right. Well, you said you did 67 podcast interviews, right? Which is a lot. I mean, even if you're doing one a week, that's more than one a week, really, in a year, let alone, doing it within a few months. So, do you want to talk to the listener about how maybe they could fit this into what they're already doing? Because so many are, working a lot as it is, running their companies, and they do want to be seen, and this is a great opportunity, but they might wonder, well, how can I balance being on these podcasts and taking the time out for that while I'm still running my company?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, Candy. And I struggled during those 4 months. Okay, I basically almost didn't do anything else. I had weeks that I did 6 interviews, and it's really draining. I don't recommend at all. What I recommend is usually the standard path, the standard rhythm is 1 interview per week, or 2 if you can. That would be cool if you're in accelerated mode. And it's always possible to, especially me being in a different time zone, for me it was a bit easier to manage it. I could book it at night just before putting my daughter to bed, or manage my life here. But yeah, if you're extremely busy, it's possible to do that in 1 interview per week, as I say. And usually the hosts are kind of flexible. They have different times that you could choose. But yeah, it's always possible. It's a matter of priority, because it's when you do these interviews, you have to remember that it's not just for this interview and then forget about it. No, it's an asset that you will have that will be forever on the interwebs, right? It will be searchable on Google. People keep finding it. Will be on YouTube if you publish. I don't know if you publish on YouTube as well, Kenny. I forgot about it, but you do as well. So it's assets you're creating that you can leverage later on to, as I said, to warm up your leads. They see you in action, being interviewed, your position as an authority. But yeah, so it's manageable. You get to decide what's your rhythm. I would advise you to do as many as possible, because it compounds, the effect compounds, right? And you get to know a lot of hosts that could become partners, because they see you in action, they talk to you, they hear your story, they trust you. So I love this strategy because of all these wins. But it's possible to manage with your day rhythm. If you want to go accelerated, if you want to go slow, It's fantastic that in that sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree with in terms of, being able to meet the host too, because as a podcast host myself, I've interviewed quite a few people that are also other podcasters too. So I know that there are a lot of people out there doing this. And sometimes they might ask, do you know anyone who'd be great for my show, or, same thing. So it's like another little network, right, of people who are in the podcasting space. And so definitely
Yes.
developing relationships with them can be beneficial. But I
Yes.
would love for you maybe to talk about just how you began finding your, the shows that you wanted to be on, how you started to reach out to them to say, hey, I'm interested in being on your show, so that they became aware of you. Because if you're just starting out, right, people probably hadn't known that you existed and were going to be a podcast guest. So what was your process to do that?
Yes. Yeah. So I had some background already, and in that program, I learned also the basics of it, and I understood that the podcast hosts. So when we're pitching ourselves to podcasts, it's not about us. I learned that the hard way, of course. It's about the podcast host. How can you add value to their podcast, right? How can you make their life easier? That's also something always on my mind. Your pitch should be all about adding value and not say, hey, I'm awesome, talk to me, I'm really cool. That doesn't work. You just be seen as another spammer. So if you take the time to, first of all, listen to at least one episode, listen a bit to it, or at least 10 minutes, I don't know, 15, whatever you have time for, to understand what the podcast is about, to create a connection in your email or in your LinkedIn message to say, hey, I heard your episode about this. I love this specific part. It made me think about something specific. And then position yourself as, how can you add value to the audience? Because podcast hosts are looking for content, right? They're looking for content that keeps their listeners engaged. And so if we position ourselves in that sense, basically it will be a numbers game. You will, right. If you keep doing that consistently to as many podcasts as possible, many of them will see you as okay, this is an awesome guest. He has a cool story to tell. He's positioned in a different way than the rest of the other competitors or whatever. And he approached me in an abundant, positive way that stands out from all the spam. I gotta have this guy, right? So I think this was the number one lesson I learned at the beginning, and now I know exactly what to do and what to say to make sure that we get the right podcast for myself and my clients.
I definitely agree with you on that. I mean, we get multiple emails a week, at least with people, wanting to be on the show. And I can tell when someone just wants to be on the show to promote themselves, because it's, I did this and I did that and I will do this and I will do, and it's all about them. And I'm like, how is that going to help my listener when you're just saying, well, I did this, I did that, where someone will come and say, like, I can share, my top tips for entrepreneurs to be able to learn how to do X, Y, Z. And the goal of my podcast is educate the entrepreneurs to help them be successful. And that's what my goal is, right? So definitely having that perspective when you're looking at, how am I going to help their audience, right? And again, in my realm, it's the entrepreneur. How can I help the entrepreneur be successful with the information I'm going to share? And that's what I want to see when someone is reaching out to me. And that's the first step, right? So I definitely agree that is important to really consider, who is the audience for that podcast and is it the right fit for you? And you don't want to come across as, promoting yourself, because we don't want that. We want, to have tips and, things like that will help our audience. So that was definitely important for you to share, I think. So, in terms of like what you also would prepare to present to the podcast host, besides your topic, and knowing who your audience is, you want to talk about maybe other resources that you might have available to offer. What should someone who wants to get into being a podcast guest consider that they should also have as, collateral or other things that they might want to share?
Yeah, so it's also important to think about the what do you want as a guest your listeners to do after they listen to you, right? How can you make sure that the right people get closer to your world? So this is part of the strategy I create with my clients. So working on the call to action at the end, right? So usually the host asks at the end, how can people know more about you or your work? And this is your opportunity to add value, but also may attract people to your world. You cannot just say, I was doing that mistake. So I say, just follow me on social media or book a call with me if you want. It doesn't work. We have to think about something. What is the logical next step for the listeners? What is the logical action that they should take afterwards so that they can get a quick win? Something that moves them a bit closer to their goal, that adds value to their lives and makes them and positions you automatically as, okay, the logical person to work with because he already helped me. I know his story. He's awesome. So it makes sense for me to, download the PDF, a free resource or a tool or something. So we have to think strategically, okay, what's the compelling next step? What do they want to achieve that we can give them a cool aha moment? Or that is very important to do and not just go randomly on podcasts and then hope that something comes out of it. You have to be strategic about it. And this is one of the strategic parts that are very not thought about. So the call to action, if you ask me this question, I'll share with you an example basically at the end.
Right, which I will. And that's a perfect, situation again too, to explain, like, yes, even though as a podcast host, I don't necessarily, want you coming on and just saying all the things that you have done and will do or whatever. But at the end, I do ask my guests, do you have an offer you'd like to share? How can our listeners connect with you? And that is the time where you can share something about yourself. And so if someone is listening and what you have to offer is something they see as an asset, it's a great resource, yes, they're going to want to reach out to you. And that is the goal of being on podcasts, right? Is to be aware of what people necessarily need and want, and then provide that to them so they can reach out to you, and then you can build your connections, right? So you still get to do that as a guest on the podcast. And so having that call to action or free resource, whatever that is that you have is important. Like you said, don't just say, oh, just give me a call or find me on social media, right? I agree with you on that too. So like, what other things have you learned from being a podcast guest all these 67 times in 4 months? Like, what are the things that you also learned? Because obviously you have learned some things along the way.
Yeah. So yeah, we discussed already the main lessons I've learned. So position yourself in an interesting way, have something differential, tell your story in a compelling way, have a call to action at the end. Also, not to only tell. If you share information only, people are already overwhelmed with information. The internet they're flooded with information. Basically, people need someone that guides them, that tells them, basically share stories of how you helped clients in the past. So it's very important to share those things. So ideas of show your practice in action and not just a lot of information and theory. What you've done, show exactly what you've done, tell stories about that. So a lot of, instead of just telling, storytelling is very, very important to know about. And also what I've learned is to not just forget to go on a podcast and then forget about it. No, that's a big mistake. Right. After you record, you should immediately start. I usually say that the period of time between the recording and the go live is probably the most profitable, even before it gets published, because you can. I'm going to ask Candy. I don't know if she's going to share with me, but I'm going to ask Candy to share with me if she can share with me the video file, so I can start creating short videos of interesting parts of the interview, always tagging and giving credit to the podcast, getting more traffic and creating anticipation for the podcast. So leveraging it for your social media, it's amazing. It's like free content for you. Always giving credit to the host. So nurture a relationship with the host, because you never know what can happen. Maybe they can refer you to another podcast, or they can become referral partners, or anything can happen if you feed that relationship, if you approach it abundantly. So leveraging all of this right after the podcast and not just forgetting about it and go to the next one. No, I think it's one of the things that I've learned, and that's really, really useful nowadays.
Right. Well, as the host again, too, I mean, we take a lot of time for this process, and a lot of people may not realize that either, but the amount of time it takes, obviously it's not just the recording time, there's editing and promotionals and creating the images to promote it, and all of that work. And so ideally too, you will see what we are doing and share it as well too. So not only your own content, but referring people back to our own. And so many times that's where we get frustrated as hosts too, is someone comes on the show because they want access to our audience, right? Yes. They want to get those customers, And there's nothing reciprocal, right? There's no like, oh, I'm so thankful I was on the Biz Help for You show or things like that too. And that becomes frustrating because I've invested time into the guests and promoting them. And obviously we would love for our show to be part of that, like tag us in your posts, right? I was so thankful to be on this, show too, because that does help us as well. And that helps us expand our reach. Like, again, my goal is to really help the entrepreneur be successful. Too many start businesses and fail. And my passion is like teach them what they need to know, whether it's in marketing or being a podcast host like we're talking today, or legal or financial that we do. There's so much to running a business. And the more that we can get the word out there, the more people we can help, right? And so I would also just piggyback on what you were saying is, yes, share what you have from that interview, but be sure to help promote the actual show that you are on too.
You should position yourself as a true partner for the host. You're there to help reciprocate, like you said, right? It has to be a win-win for everyone. The hosts have an amazing content and access to also the guest's audience, right? Not just the opposite. The guest gets access to new audiences, gets to network with amazing people, gets to create content for themselves, and the listeners get like this mastermind effect of two people creating content together. So it's absolutely it has to be a win-win-win situation.
Right, exactly. Well, is there anything else maybe that I didn't think to ask you that you want to share regarding, being that podcast host and your journey of how you learned through your process that will help the listener understand maybe what they need to do to become the great podcast guest?
Yeah, I think the main takeaway is really how can you position yourself in a different way. This is something that most of my clients, even when they think they have it, they actually still position themselves as a commodity. Like I'm the Facebook ads guy. That's not something differential nowadays, right? There's so many people doing that. We need to sit down. Okay, let's think about how you came about to do what you're doing nowadays. What's your story, right? How can we find? We discussed initially that those different unique mechanisms that position you as someone new, interesting, someone that has something different that stands out from the pack. So I love to spend hours on that, and my client, something I recommend everyone to do, basically, for not just for podcasting. And that crossed with the fact that if you are here to help the podcast host, everything, the effect doubles, because they will be happy with you. They'll promote you even better. They will find other hosts to have you on. I think approaching this in the most abundant way, because it's a very networking world, the podcasting world, right? Everyone knows each other, and so I think those two things would be the main lessons I've learned so far.
Perfect. Well, I know we're coming close to the end of the time that we have together, so I do want to ask what your offer is for the audience, and if people are interested in connecting with you, how can they do that?
Yes, thank you so much. So the first place to connect, I'm fully focused on my LinkedIn profile. I can share the link afterwards. If you find Tiago Faria, you'll find my profile. But I have there also something cool for your listeners, because I know how hard it is to get booked and to go. They don't have to go through the process I've done, the 4 months, 67. You don't need to go through that. I already did the path for you. So first I have for free I have a worksheet to share with your listeners. It's called Being an Amazing Guest, and where I do prompt questions that help you extract your unique mechanism, how to position yourself differently. So that helps in that process. And also the origin story worksheet that I use with my clients. If you complete it, you will immediately position yourself as an attractive guest that stands out, because those questions are formatted in a way that make you think strategically about your story, not just a bunch of facts, but with a hero's journey, etc. So those two I can have available for your listeners. And also the email template that I use to get booked on those 67 podcasts, I can share with your audience as well. And all they have to do is go to tiagofaria.pt/gift. It will direct them to that LinkedIn post where you can talk to me, and I can share all those resources with you.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Tiago, for being a guest on my show and sharing your experience as being, a podcast guest, what you went through with those 67 interviews in 4 months. That is a lot. That's definitely more than most people probably are thinking about doing, but it was a great experience for you and to be able to share kind of what you've learned from that. So I appreciate that.
No, it was a true honor, Candy. Thank you so much for your kindness, for your flexibility, for having me. And I hope people took something out of this interview today.
Perfect. And to the listener, I hope you enjoyed this topic. And if you do want to learn more, be sure to check out the exclusive content that we have available for you. Thank you for tuning in today. Would you please share this episode with those you know and leave a review on your favorite platform? And if you find our show informative, would you consider being a financial sponsor to help me continue my mission to educate business owners? A link is located in the episode description, and no amount is too small. I'd really appreciate your support. If you are interested in connecting with our guest and receiving the offer they had to share, a link to our resource page is in the show notes. Finally, if you have any bookkeeping or payroll needs, reach out to us at 310-534-5577 or contact@abandp.com. My team and I are eager to assist you. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.